What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video here. In this one, we're going to be going over the likelihood, the odds as to whether or not Palantir is going to be added to the SP 500 after close tomorrow. Now, what we're going to do also is, I know that we've been talking a lot about which of these tickers could or could not be added to the S&P 500 too in the Discord community. So we're going to go over a couple of those tickers as well, just so everybody has a good understanding of the different possibilities of what could happen tomorrow after close. So before we get into all of that information, everybody, if you guys do enjoy the information and analysis I provide for you guys in these videos here, if you guys wouldn't mind going down, hitting that like button, costs you nothing to do it, helps me out a whole lot, spreading these streams out to as many people who want to learn. So first, I want to go over what the requirements are for a stock to get included in the S&P 500. So just looking at this sheet right here, it's pretty straightforward. Must be a US-based company. The company satisfies the periodic reporting obligations set forth in the US Securities and Exchange Act. Basically, are they reporting on time? Are they making all of their financials and documents public on a timely basis? Now, also must be listed on a major U.S. stock exchange, NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, or the CBOE. Must have a market cap of 18 billion or more. Now, this market cap number, it's not going to matter for the tickers that we're talking about, but just for informational purposes in this video here, that market cap number changes, because if you look at the actual the actual kind of prospectus as to how these tickers are added, it's basically a rolling basis, and there's a certain percentile that an outside ticker needs to be in terms of market cap as it relates to the companies that are already in the S&P 500. So it's 18 billion or more as of the last quarter. It's probably going to be right around there, 14, 15 billion, right around that area. So a stock should trade a minimum of 250,000 shares in each of the 6 months prior to being evaluated for index inclusion. Basically, they want liquidity here. They want to make sure that all of these big institutions and ETFs that could potentially be buying some of these companies that then would qualify according to a lot of these other requirements here. Well, how easy is it for these institutions to actually transact in that certain name, which again, all of these are going to qualify for. Now, again, the most recent quarter's GAAP earnings, as well as the sum of the previous 4 quarters of earnings, should be positive. So, as I think everybody all knows at this point, Palantir meets all of these criteria here. When we come over and take a look at Palantir as well, we can just go through a couple of their last earnings reports. Positive EPS right here. Go to their last EPS earnings report. Positive EPS there as well. Positive EPS here. I believe it's the last 7 quarters that Palantir has had GAAP profitability, which is very, very, very significant and awesome for the company. I mean, this was a stock that we used to talk about years ago, and quite honestly, it is one of these tickers that I do have some of the highest conviction on over the next 5 to 10 years for a wide variety of reasons. One, as we were coming out of that 2020, 2021 period where these institutional investors weren't really taking that close of a look at Palantir for 2 main reasons, which they've now solved. A really high percentage of stock-based compensation, and they also had a really high percentage of their revenue coming from government clients. They wanted to see more diversification of revenue, and also the more diversification of revenue as well as I'm losing my train of thought here. What was it? Diversification. Oh, stock-based compensation. Lower percentage of stock-based compensation. Now, in addition to this, I kind of want to go over so far which indexes that Palantir is already in, because this is going to bring me to my main point of this video, because I think especially with a stock like Palantir that has a pretty big following on social media, people are going to get really excited or get their hopes up and almost be upset about the results of something that may not actually make that big of a difference in the long term. So when we take a look at Palantir over here on ETF.com, the largest holder of it is going to be VO, the Vanguard Mid Cap Index Fund. It's in VTI, obviously, the Vanguard Total Stock Market ETF, IWP, iShares Russell Mid Cap Growth ETF. It's in 152 ETFs, and these ETFs in total hold about 142.9 shares of Palantir. And when we come over and take a look, I believe the float should be over here. There's about 1.97 billion shares in the float, so publicly available for retail investors or institutional investors to come out and purchase. So When we think about Palantir here and its prospects over the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years, yes, it is possible to get a little bit of a boost in share price in the short term if it is added to the S&P 500 after close tomorrow. But what I think we all should realize, especially as being shareholders in this company, and I think everybody that follows me knows the difficulties that I've had trying to buy more Palantir shares. There was the situation right around 14.50 where I was selling puts on it. Recently at 25 where I wanted to buy about 400 more shares. It looked like I was going to get them, and then all of a sudden the earnings come out and the stock is back at 30. When we think about this company here, just in general and its performance this year so far, looking at this on a 12-month time frame here, it's up 75% this year. So when you're thinking about this company for the long term and you've had a year where it's up like 75%, it really doesn't make all that much of a difference if you have this kind of external catalyst coming with S&P 500, basically ETF inclusion or index inclusion. Would it be good and would it be nice to say, okay, this stock that a lot of people have been paying attention to for many years has now been put in one of the largest ETFs and indexes in the world? Yes, it would have, but we don't know if it's actually going to get added or not. My expectation is it actually doesn't this time around, and we're going to go over some tickers that actually could. But to me, it really doesn't make or break anything. Let's say that it would have gotten it would get like a 5% increase in its share price here. It's already up 75% this year. Now, especially with something like Palantir, where you could make the argument that the valuation right now isn't all that justified. It has run up a very significant amount for good reason. I mean, we've had some very, very positive earnings catalysts. The further diversification of their clients, getting these new contracts, whether they're commercial or government clients, AIP, the boot camps, everything. I mean, there's a lot to be happy about with this stock here, and I don't think really paying that much attention to or really coming in and saying and getting your hopes up and your excitement up about the potential for S&P 500 inclusion is really the best for anybody. Will it happen eventually? I think so. I think they would be pretty stupid, honestly, not to include this in the S&P 500, but I don't really think that it's something to get really all that hyped up about in the short term. Now, let's talk very quickly about a couple of other tickers that could get added to the S&P 500 after close tomorrow. The first one is going to be Dell. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, Dell's been around forever. How is this not in the S&P 500 yet? Well, that's a question that a lot of investors are asking themselves. Again, they're going to meet all of these criteria as well. And honestly, this chart setup isn't all that bad. Again, we were talking about this on the morning stream and in the Discord community that I would have liked this to hold this 10 EMA on the daily here to get a really nice setup, especially going into non-farm payrolls tomorrow. In all of the data that we've seen this week, it would have been nice to see Dell hold and have a little bit more strength. But again, it's not the end of the world. Dell is one that could get added. Now, APO is another one that's interesting to me. I'm not necessarily sure this is going to be one that gets added. It has been floated around on a couple of the different articles out here. Apollo Global Management. It is possible they meet a lot of the or all of the criteria as well, so look out for this one. We also have TTD, the trade desk, which actually is holding up relatively well here, so I would be very interested to see if TTD would get in there as well. And I probably will take a shot at a couple of these short term in the trading account just to kind of get some exposure to these potential bounces on the S&P 500 inclusion. And then you also have Workday. Workday is another one that meets all of these criteria here and also could get added to the S&P. Now, the last thing that I kind of want to leave you with, which is kind of why I brought up APO and also Dell, is that if you think about the performance of the recent names that have been added to the S&P, specifically CrowdStrike and SMCI, their performance since getting added has been absolutely abysmal. We see SMCI getting absolutely hammered, especially after that short report from Hindenburg. You saw the CrowdStrike situation where their servers went down and all of a sudden everybody kind of figured out, oh wow, CrowdStrike's actually a very, very important company to the global economy here. So those two companies really have not performed well since getting added into the S&P, and it's possible that there could be an argument that whoever's on the committee makes to add some safer bets to the S&P 500 this quarter around. As you guys all know, September, October, and November also is not necessarily the best time for the market, September specifically, as well as leading into an election in an election year. So we are going to see a lot of volatility in the markets leading up into the end of the year. And I don't know if adding some of those other tickers, like maybe a TTD or a workday, would be the smartest decisions at this current time due to the broad market conditions. And that kind of brings me back to Palantir as well. It's not like I'm saying that Palantir could absolutely tumble from the highs. It's possible, it's pretty unlikely because of the numbers that they've been posting on their earnings. But the volatility could still be there. So that's why something like maybe a Dell, an APO. I mean, again, a lot of these tickers have had a significant amount of volatility this year. And I think what they would look for is more so those historic levels. I mean, we could do a whole YouTube video breaking down the historical variance of these to actually measure the volatility. But again, with this type of event, it doesn't really warrant that type of analysis just because it's not going to make or break really anything. And that's kind of how I view it as it relates to Palantir. Would it be nice? Sure. Would I be a little upset that I can't buy some more shares lower? Yeah, obviously. But if we do end up moving a little bit lower off of Palantir not getting added to the S&P, I definitely will be a buyer because I need more shares. So team, that is going to wrap it up for this one. If you guys did enjoy the information and analysis I provided for you guys in this video here, make sure you guys go down, drop a like on that like button down there. And if you guys do enjoy these videos here that I post on this channel, make sure you guys subscribe and have notifications on so you never miss another one. But other than that, team, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.